What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another Celtics Talk Weekly special edition episode. I'm your host, Seamus Zarlingo, here today. Alongside of me, Rob Haytayan. Rob, we've made it. We've made it
Yeah.
to the NBA Conference Finals, East and West. Of course, the Boston Celtics not included in these conference finals. However, as NBA fans, as NBA observers, we still have to talk about this big moment in NBA history. And first, we'll be starting on the Knicks and Pacers series a little later on. We'll get into the Thunder and Wolves series as well over in the Western Conference. But here we're starting in the East, and we're talking about two familiar teams to the Boston Celtics the last 2 years. The Celtics facing both teams in different playoff series, the Pacers and the Knicks. But now individually, the Knicks and Pacers will be facing off for the second time in 2 years. Last year, the Knicks fell in Game 7 in the 2024 Eastern Conference semifinals to the Indiana Pacers. And then, of course, this year, the Celtics, they see the Knicks in the second round. The Knicks advance past the Celtics and now play the Indiana Pacers in the 2025 Eastern Conference Finals. But Rob, looking at this series, just a plain view of it early on, what are your initial thoughts on this Knicks and Pacers series?
Well, I said this before we started. My initial thoughts is, damn, it's been a minute since the Boston Celtics have not been playing late into May. We talked about this. It's almost been 5 years because that COVID year, that first round match against the Nets was late into May. So it's been weird, first of all. Second of all, looking at this series in particular, the Pacers and the Knicks, this one is kind of exciting, and it is a shame that the overlooming Celtics losing to New York is going to kind of almost ruin it from the fan side of me of basketball. But the analyst side of me is actually pretty excited for this series because these are two teams that kind of play complete different styles of basketball. New York, a little bit more iso-centric, star reliant. In Indiana is a much more share the ball around Halliburton, get the ball moving, get out in transition team. So I like Indiana in this series. If I were to pick one of the two right now, but before this starts, I will say home court advantage, I think, does really matter in both sides of the brackets now, because you have in this series, you got two teams with not a whole lot of experience. Obviously, Indiana was there last year, so they kind of lean heavily on that experience factor over New York. But I think taking care of business at home, if you look at the New York side of things, is going to be crucial for them. This is a team that has struggled this playoffs, Seamus, at taking care of business on their home floor at MSG, a place that's supposed to be very difficult to play. Now, they took care of business in Game 6 against Boston, which was their first closeout win at home in the past 5 games. But I look at Indiana, and that's a team that I have faith in taking care of business at home. And I look at New York, and I'm not so confident in their abilities really to take care of business at Madison Square Garden. And I think in a matchup like this, that could be the difference of going to the NBA Finals or going back home and falling short of that goal. I'm going to go Indiana here. And if I were to pick a game amount, we talked about it off camera a little bit, I'm leaning 5. But I also really could see this series going 6. Can Indiana close out the series on the road in a Game 5? I don't necessarily think so. I think that's going to be a tough punch to take from New York. I'll go 6 here, but I do think there's room for 5, and I do think there's room for 7. So I don't know about you, but that's how I kind of see this overall series, really dedicated on which team can take care of business at home.
Yeah, this series, I said it last round. Last round, I was going, oh, I think the conference finals on the Western side of things, I'm going, oh, I think OKC, Minnesota, those are safe bets over on that side because the Nuggets and Warriors, they just didn't really have the juice aside from other things. But in the East, I was saying, oh, Celtics, Cavs, they, regardless of any of what we saw in the first round, we still have the two most talented teams in the East put together in the second round, and I was expecting the Celtics and Cavs to meet. However, after that second round, after that semifinals series, after that semifinals round, these two teams right here in the East, the Knicks and the Pacers, these two teams are the two teams who should be here right now because the Knicks and the Pacers, they both have that dog mentality. They are both riding high on confidence right now. The Pacers, they just take out the Cavs in 5 games. The Knicks, obviously, on the other end of the bracket, they take out the Celtics in 6 games. And the conversation all season long. This is why I advocated throughout the regular season. We have to talk about different opponents because we don't know. The Celtics and Cavaliers, everybody was chalking it up to saying, oh, that's just going to be the Eastern Conference Finals. I can't see anything else. But come playoff time, come semifinal time, the Cavaliers and Celtics, they break down from a health standpoint and a mentality standpoint. You think about both game twos in both series for the Cavs and Celtics on their home floors, both just collapse in those game twos. And the Knicks and Pacers, they grab great road wins in both series. And they're just both riding high on confidence right now. And I think they both have the mentality to be here in this spot, as well as the versatility and talent on their roster, as well as the health. That was a huge thing with the Knicks and the Pacers in the first two rounds is they were the healthiest teams. If you look at the rest of the Eastern Conference, they were either rattled. You look at the Orlando Magic in the Celtics series, the Celtics themselves in that series against the Knicks, the Pistons, they were missing Isaiah Stewart. And on the top of the bracket, you have the Bucks. They were a thrown around team this year. They were banged up by the end of the series. The second round, the Cavaliers were banged up. Now, a lot of guys did play in that series, but we know Garland was a shell of his former self. Hunter wasn't right. Mobley wasn't right. And you just have all these injured, ailing teams in these. The Miami Heat, they were put together at the trade deadline, essentially. All these ailing teams in the East. Well, who are the two healthiest teams right now? Who are the two teams clicking the most? It's the Pacers, it's the Knicks. And that's how it was a little bit at the end of the regular season. The Knicks were scuffling a little bit at that end of the regular season, but the last couple of games they were starting to turn it up. I know we did a post game after game 79, and that's when the Knicks, they took the Celtics to overtime, eventually lost that game. But we look back at that game, it was like, oh, it was a little bit of foreshadowing of what we were going to see in the Celtics Knicks series later on in time, closer games. It wasn't none of these, I should say, outside of, I guess, games 3 and 5 in the Celtics Knicks series, we didn't see the blowouts, right? We saw the close games from the Knicks and the Celtics, and then game 6, the Celtics get blown out. But between the Knicks and Pacers, they're the two teams clicking at the right time. And the Pacers specifically at the end of the year, they were, if you looked at that mid tier of the East, the Bucks, the Pistons, the Pacers, a lot of people were high on the Pistons, but I was big on the Pistons. They went on an 8-game winning streak, a 9-game
Right.
winning streak
Back in
against
February.
lesser teams. People really they started to get high on them, but I just didn't believe in them as much as some of these other well-established built teams like the Knicks and even like the Pacers. The Pacers, I thought they alleviated themselves from that category of the Bucks and Pistons. Yes, you could still put them in that same tier, but I felt like they were the top team within that tier of teams at the end of the season. And in the first two rounds, they meet two banged up opponents in the Bucks and the Cavs, and now they're here. And I'm not surprised from a roster construction. If you look at the construction of the Pacers roster, I'm not surprised that they're here. I'm a little surprised they're here from the fact of what we saw early in the season, where the Pacers looked like a complete mess on the offensive end of the floor, and they didn't look like a cohesive team. And it almost felt like, ooh, is this going to be the next version of the Atlanta Hawks? Is this just going to be a
Right.
Pacers team that maybe they're a little bit better than play-in Atlanta Hawks ever since 2021, but they're this team that they're defensively, they're not the best defensive team in the league. Offensively, they looked like at last season, offense was the name of the game for the Pacers, running and gunning up and down the floor in transition, points, possessions, 3-point shots, volume for the Pacers last season. Well, coming into this season, some of those strengths last year faded away. I mean, the Pacers offense looked terrible at the beginning of the season. I was thinking, well, if some of their best strengths, which lay on the offensive end of the floor, aren't taken away from them, they're going to be in that mid tier, if not lower tier of the East, and that's where they were at the beginning of the season. However, obviously throughout the season they were able to gain that cohesion and that chemistry to the point where they're clicking on all the right cylinders at the right time of the year, which is in the NBA playoffs, as we've seen in the first two rounds. But just looking at the construction of the Pacers roster, just starting with them, I thought they would be a little bit better of a team this year coming in than last year for multiple reasons. Number one, you have Siakam for an entire year this season. Last year, the Pacers acquired Siakam at the 24 deadline. So you had that within the whole mix of the Pacers last year. Matherin was not healthy last year. Halliburton near the end of the playoffs wasn't healthy last year. Now, this year, all these players were relatively healthy, had a full season together. And I was thinking Siakam, Turner, the rebounding, the defense in that front court. Halliburton, Nimhard. You even have Matherin there. The scoring is very present defensively. On this team, you have guys like Neesmith, Nimhard, even TJ McConnell coming off the bench. He's almost their Peyton Pritchard-esque player. Doesn't in a very different way, but he's very Peyton Pritchard-esque the way he comes in and sparks that team on either end of the floor. And so the Pacers, I think they have a lot going for them. Obviously, Tyrese Halliburton too, just another clutch player who can get it done in crunch time in many different ways, either playmaking for his team or scoring points himself. The Pacers roster is just very deep. I mean, they're going essentially 11 deep in these playoffs so far, which is just outrageous, thinking playoff rotations are usually 7, 8 guys, maybe a ninth. The Pacers, they've been comfortable playing 11 guys, and they've really shown it, especially in their big man rotation. Jarris Walker and Thomas Bryant, they're actually getting minutes in the playoffs. It's not 20 minutes a night, but 10 minutes for those guys here and there. You see it from the Indiana Pacers, and you see the Pacers playing all these guys early on in games and throughout. Meanwhile, on the other end, the New York Knicks, the thing that's special about the Knicks right now is they're all healthy and they're almost reminiscent of the Celtics in 2022, where that Celtics team, they were not very deep whatsoever. They basically had what, 7, 8 guys on that roster, and then the rest were just fill-ins after the trade
Right.
deadline. And it was like, oh, let's see what we can get here. And then eventually that Celtics team made the 2022 NBA Finals. But the strength was in the core of that team, the top 7 of that team. The strength was in the core. That's where the strength is within this New York Knicks team. They know they have 7 guys. Tom Thibodeau knows he has 7 guys in which he can rely on day in and day out to execute the game plan, in which is made for them against whichever opponent they go up against in the NBA playoffs. But Brunson, McBride, Hart, Bridges, Anunoby, Towns, and Mitchell Robinson. Those are your 7 guys for the New York Knicks right there. And you're not going to see much fluctuation. You might see Precious Achua at times in the series. You might see Campaign at times, but they're going to be just throw-ins here and there. They're not really going to be part of the entire rotation. Meanwhile, on the Pacers end, it's going to be interesting to see whether or not they shorten up their rotation. Halliburton, McConnell, Nimhard, Matherin, Shepard, Neesmith, Siakam, Toppin, Turner, Walker, and Bryant. It's going to be interesting. I think you might see a little less of Walker and Bryant in this series, and probably a little bit less of Shepard, and that brings the rotation down to 8 guys. And then you're thinking of McConnell, Matherin, Toppin off the bench, which is still a pretty solid bench core for the Indiana Pacers. But in terms of making a prediction for this series, I think it's going to be pretty close. I think it's going to be a fairly close series because the Knicks, we were talking about this. I was talking about it with Griffin on our Brad Stevens press conference pod yesterday. We were talking about how with Kristaps Porzingis, because Brad Stevens was talking about Kristaps Porzingis in his offseason, we were talking about maybe it's just better for guys to not rest and be conditioned. Maybe it's just better for them to be in shape and play basketball, right? Just maybe it's better because you think like, how do people get out of shape? It's like because they're not moving. It's because they're not active. It's like there's a fine line between resting and doing nothing. I'm not saying NBA players are doing nothing, but how this point relates to the New York Knicks is the New York Knicks, these 7 guys, they played a lot of minutes, and we keep saying, oh, they're going to break down. Oh, they're going to break down. Oh, Robinson's going to go down with an injury. Oh, somebody's going to break down on this roster. Oh, they're going to be fatigued. Well, last series against the Celtics, who out of those 2 teams, which team looked more fatigued? It was the Boston Celtics out of both of those teams, and that was the team all year long. Oh, we're resting Holiday. Oh, we're resting Horford. Oh, resting Porzingis. Oh, resting guys here and there. Meanwhile, the Knicks, Tom Thibodeau's ramping up their minutes every single night, and that team at the end of the year seemed to be playing harder than the Celtics. That's why I look at this series and go, even though Indiana's deep, I don't deny that the Knicks can't put up a full series here of 6, 7 games where they're actually competing in each and every single one of these games down in crunch time, and they're not like the fatigue factor isn't coming into play. The styles of play, that's where you could see I think Indiana has certainly more versatility on the roster, but even last series we said that for the Celtics and the Knicks, they were able to throw together a game plan in which, number one, I will say the Celtics, they did do a good they did good. They there was a good amount of the Celtics shooting themselves in the foot in that series
A
for
lot of
sure.
it. A lot of
But
that.
but the Knicks' game plan against the Celtics was also fantastic, and it wasn't only their game plan; it was about the execution of their game plan, specifically on the defensive end of the floor. We forget Tom Thibodeau is a defensive mastermind, and I do wonder if that comes out more in the series against the Indiana Pacers, knowing the Pacers. Unfortunately, as rough as it is to say, the Pacers have a more complex offensive system than the Celtics, a more creative offensive system than the Celtics. Do they have as many options? Not quite, but they have a more robust offensive system with more ways to score within their offense. Now, do they have the talent of the Celtics? Absolutely not. The Pacers do not have the talent of the Celtics. However, the way in which they play on the offensive end of the floor, they're a very potent offensive team. And so the Knicks will certainly have themselves a challenge cut out because I think defending the Pacers in this series from the Knicks standpoint is going to be tougher than defending the Celtics. Again, for as rough as it is to say, and
Much
then the
tougher.
Pacers, I think the Pacers are going to have trouble um, guarding the Knicks because I think the Knicks just have a lot of size, a lot of physicality, a lot of activity. I think they're going to in the series. I think the Knicks have the possibility to win all the hustle stats, the rebounding stats, all of those little things in which we think, oh yeah, within the margins of the games. I mean, if some of these games are decided by 1, 2, 3 points, 5 points, well, that's a margin of 1, 2, 3 offensive rebounds, a couple of turnovers here and there. So I think the Knicks, from that standpoint, could have an advantage in this series. And I also you just look at crunch time, Halliburton versus Brunson. That's going to be a toss up. I think both of those players could be equally as clutch come crunch time. Meanwhile, we saw in these other series, the Cavs, the Celtics, they I mean their clutch status went away in those semifinal series. But if I were to make a prediction on New York and Indiana here, I'm gonna have to go Indiana in 7 again. I'm gonna have to go Indiana in 7. And what's crazy about that is and maybe I'm making the same mistake because we came on here for the playoff preview, right? And I was going,
Yeah.
oh, Clippers in 7. But when it got to that point, leading up to game 7, it was like, did I really just pick James Harden on the road in
Oh,
game
in the
7?
game 7.
And then what happened was exactly what was
Actually,
expected once we
James
got to that
Harden
point.
showed up on the road in the game 7.
So I see the history here of yes, the Knicks won a game 7 last year on the road. Or sorry, not the Knicks. The Pacers won a game 7 last year on the road against the Knicks at MSG. They have the history of doing that. So they've proven like, okay, we can do that. But that Knicks team was banged up last year. That was a completely different Knicks team. And if both teams are healthy here, what we saw in that game 6 against the Knicks, the Celtics Knicks game 6, I just feel like the Knicks now, yes, they've struggled at home in the playoffs, but I feel
Right.
like if the opportunity to go to the NBA Finals is there and it's in front of the MSG crowd for the Knicks, they could play up to that level of game 6. Now I understand the Celtics, there was a great bit of collapse there, but I do
Yeah.
believe the way the Knicks played in that game 6, it's like they came out immediately, defensive activity, flying all over the floor, aggressive offensively, attacking the rim, hitting their shots. It was like it was that typical closeout game at home. Like we're not letting this go 7. We're ending the series here tonight. I feel like a game 7 to go to the NBA Finals between the Knicks and Pacers at MSG, that's where this home court advantage could really come into play because I think the Knicks, I think they're going to perform well under those circumstances. They're the one team that I could actually see. Oh, instead of everybody getting tight, it's like, oh, I think the Knicks, they actually might be the ones to step up to that occasion. But it's hard. It's like I want to take Indiana in 7. I'll do this. If it goes 6, I'm going Indiana. But if Indiana, if they lose game 6 to close out the series, I'm going Knicks in 7 at home at MSG. I think that's hard to say, hard to predict, but I think it's just what's going to happen.
I think an underrated, or like for me, I'm looking at this series, who's handled themselves better so far, given the circumstances in this series. It's tough for me to gauge New York because of what Boston did, right? Boston was a team that, in my eyes, they gave away 2 games. They gave New York 2 free wins. Now, on the flip side, you could say New York had, you know, the dog in them to come back down 20 twice. And I agree with that. But game 2, the New York Knicks put up their worst offensive performance right, of the season. They had played 89 games up to that point, Seamus, and it ranked dead last, 89th in their offensive performance, right? And they won. Right? That doesn't happen in the playoffs. That doesn't just like, that's an anomaly win. And I look at games like that from a New York standpoint, and I'm like, okay, it's tough to gauge where New York's truly at right now. I look at Indiana, and that's a team that handled themselves at every point against Cleveland really well. Cleveland was banged up. Indiana took advantage of that. It's the same story we saw Boston last year, right? Boston ran into some banged up teams. They were probably the better team. They just took care of business, right? Okay, you're banged up. We're probably better than you. Yeah, see you in 5, see you in 4. And that's what Indiana's done. And then I look at New York, that series against Detroit going 6. That means something to me. New York's much better than Detroit, and that should not have been a series that goes 6 games. It's almost like New York has struggled at taking advantage of a moment. They did it twice against Boston, and I have to give them credit there. But it's tough for me to gauge just where exactly New York is right now because of truly how bad Boston was. Like, Boston was truly just horrendous in the first 2 games, coughed up two wins to New York, and then here come the Knicks all of a sudden, up 3-1 after winning a game at home, splitting the home stretch, and they're up 3-1 and putting themselves in a prime position to get in here. Mind you, they took advantage of that, but it's tough because of how Boston looked and how bad Boston was, and how New York was able to get wins that against Boston, that if they do that against Indiana, they won't get the win. And that's where it's struggling for me. It's like, okay, I agree. New York's this team that's got a lot of dog. MSG is going to be a tough place to play in. But how much of that Boston series was New York taking advantage and executing versus how much of it was Boston just truly being that bad down the stretch? And again, we'll have to wait and see. These first game or two will really tell us most of those answers, right? But for me, that's the one thing holding me back on New York being in control of the series at any point, because Indiana has done a phenomenal job at just simply taking care of business. They see Cleveland, they did it in 5. Cleveland was banged up. They looked rough. It was really the Donovan Mitchell show. They said, okay, well, we're a more complete team. Clutch moments. They had their closer in Halliburton, just excellent on the road in game 2 and that comeback. So it's just tough for me to really pinpoint where New York's at. And I think it's a little bit easier for me to gauge where Indiana's at. But again, every series is different, right? Every series is different. So game 1 and 2 will really tell us what New York's made of. It's a conversation we haven't had to get. I've never seen the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals in my lifetime. So this is new uncharted territory for basketball fans of our age, and especially for this Knicks team. So it's going to be a fun series. I really do believe that. I mean, Indiana, New York, it's got that classic vintage feel to it. It sucks the Celtics have to go down in the process, but that's what I'm looking at in these first 2 games. What does New York look like, right, when they go down by 8 points? Because they would go down by 8 points against Boston, and that 8-point lead for Boston would go to 14, and then it would go to 20. And they did a phenomenal job again at 20, back to 14, back to 8, eventually taking the lead. How much of those process of New York coming back, right? This is the main question. How much of that process was New York, and how much of that process was Boston, right? New York getting the lead back, or was it Boston giving them the lead back? That we'll see potentially in these first 2 games. Or on the flip side, maybe that doesn't even matter, right? Maybe neither of these teams find themselves up 20 points in this series, and it really is a back and forth affair. Again, you don't know. It's a new series, but I think looking back on what we have, right, the answers to the test that we've already been filled out, that's kind of where I'm leaning. It's like, okay, Indiana, they've taken care of business. They've handled themselves much better. New York's a team that allowed Detroit to push them to 6. They allowed Boston in game 5 to come out there and roll over, or and not roll over without their best player. They handled themselves phenomenally in game 6 on the road, or at home, like you said. I mean, it hurts me to say it, but like the great execution. They came back home and they absolutely mollywopped the Celtics. So there's that too. But those first 2, right? Knicks go up 2-0. Those first 2 freebies in my head, maybe it's the Celtics fan in me talking, but those freebies, that is the deciding factor. Will that matter? And if it does matter, how much was it Boston? How much was it New York?
Yeah, I would have to agree with your point there on just Indiana. If you were to generally look at the paths of destruction, right?
Right.
Indiana has 100% you use the correct phrase there, taking care of business, right? Because the Bucks and the Cavs, they were both, I mean, they were both squads in which were at the time of both of those series, they were on the downtrend. And whether it was because of injuries or literal play throughout the season, they were both on the downtrend. When we think about Cleveland, I mean, they had that weird stretch at the end of the year where they lost four straight. And I know they looked dominant against the Heat. But when you enter that series injured and kind of off your rhythm of what we saw at the early portion of the regular season, Indiana came in there and took advantage with the trend they're on, which is an upward trend. And Indiana has certainly taken care of business more in the first two rounds, aside from New York. I mean, New York, that's where I'm like, which do I believe in more? Do I believe in the trend of Indiana destroying the Bucks and the Cavs in 5 games? And, Indiana, they were very close to going to at least six in Milwaukee because
Right.
they nearly lost game
That's
five,
true.
miracle comeback.
Milwaukee coughed that up. So
And then
that's good.
game two against the Cavaliers, same thing happened there, where the Cavaliers have a substantial lead at the end of that game, and the Indiana Pacers come back, and Tyrese Halliburton comes up with playoff classic. That was a playoff classic, getting his own rebound, dribbling it back out, hitting a step back three. I mean, those are one of those plays where you're going, whoa, the most ideal scenario for the Pacers just played out. Otherwise, I mean, that was not a 50-50. That was very much a 90-10 scenario right there, and it fell towards the Pacers' way at that 10% mark. And so the Pacers, they do have those moments in the playoffs too where it's like, okay, things could have gone the other way, but they did handle their business. Meanwhile, New York on the other end, I go, well, they've had many of those moments. I brought it up during the Celtics series. I don't remember what it was in relation to after which game, but I was mentioning how, like
Game one. I remember this. I
it
remember
was
this
like
game one. Right after
all
game
of
one.
their games in
Yep.
the playoffs. Like they had won like 4 or 5 straight games by like
Mhm.
2 points, 1 point, 3 points. And I was going, eventually, like this has to fall the other way. Like these are like coin flip games for the Knicks, and they're all landing on the Knicks. It's like it's all landing on heads, heads, heads. It's like eventually we have to get tails in here somewhere. It's like the mathematical properties of the universe tell us tails is on the horizon. And so I do wonder in this next series, right? Is that factor still in play? Like it didn't really factor into the Celtics series near the end because obviously Tatum goes out and that whole series after game 3 is just or after game 4 I should say is just in the last 2 games we thought the Celtics didn't really have much of a chance. Although the Celtics for that game 5, I mean they got us hyped up for like 3 more days. It was like, oh, game 5, and then the day after and then the day before game 6 was like, hey, maybe we can do this, but then all for naught. But
Yeah.
all the close games, right? I think this could be this. I don't this series, I would be shocked if one team just runs away with it. That's my thing. Like, even if it's a 5 gamer for Indiana, I see them being a fairly tough 5 games. I could see them blowing out the Knicks in one or two of those games, but I don't see them just absolutely running away with the rest of the games and say, like, oh, it's just not close. Like we saw the Timberwolves Warriors series. That wasn't really close. And it's like I don't really see that happening, obviously, because that was due to an injury. Hopefully, we don't see that. We go. Gonna do the classic
Right.
knock on the wood here. Hopefully, we don't see that in either of these conference final series. But the Knicks, I do wonder if that's going to factor in for them if there are close games in this series. If that coin flip starts falling more towards the Pacers and not the Knicks, or rather the Knicks opponent. But I also do look on the other end of that argument and go, well, to be fair, it's like, yeah, all these were coin flips, but at what point are the Knicks maybe just awesome in crunch time? Maybe like, what if they're just off? Like in
Right.
the Celtics series, they won the series off crunch time, essentially. Now, yes, the Celtics fumbled away every single crunch time opportunity with their own play, especially in games 1 and 2, and fumbled away those leads. But at the same time, those games were still manageable for the Celtics down the stretch. The Celtics had every opportunity the Knicks had. And meanwhile, it's like, who came up with those games? The New York Knicks, because they had better execution on both ends, better rebounding, and they in those moments they had a better clutch shot maker. It's like Tatum and Brown, for as great as they've been in their careers, in games 1 and 2 down the stretch, in particular, they were awful. And meanwhile, on the other end of the floor, it was, oh, Mikal Bridges, he's going crazy in the fourth. Oh, Brunson, he's going crazy in the fourth. Obviously, Jalen Brunson, he's always going crazy in the fourth. But I do wonder if the Knicks, if that close game data, right? I wonder if that's going to either flip or if it suggests that, hey, maybe the Knicks are just a really, really good crunch time team who, if a game is close, they're going to win that game. But you look on the other side of the fence and their opponent, the Indiana Pacers, they're kind of in the same boat. It's like, oh, their clutch time performances against Cleveland and even in the playoffs in general, I mean, it's been up there with the Knicks where it's like, okay, a couple close games in here, they've all fallen the Pacers' way. Maybe the next, like maybe in this next series, maybe they don't fall the Pacers' way. But at the same time, I do look at the Pacers and go, okay, their execution as well on the other end, on the other end of the bracket, has been there as well as the Knicks. So I just look at this series. I think it's going to be a very close series. I don't really see either team running away with it, and just
Right.
I'm I will say the Pacers, the two big things going for them, right? Two big things. Number one, the talk we're on now is just the trend of Indiana and the trend of New York in the playoffs, where New York, it's like, ooh, tiptoeing here and there, and like their opponents are blowing it, and New York is taking advantage of their opponents. Meanwhile, on the other end of the bracket, it's like, okay, Indiana, they're facing hobbling teams, but they're just kind of blowing past these teams once they have their advantage, once they've grabbed the early portion of the series. That's number one, the Indiana trend of just they played. If you look at the end
That
of the regular
sounds so
season to
familiar,
now,
though. Think about last year. That sounds like Indiana, who was tiptoeing, in Boston on the other end of the bracket, who was just taking advantage. Just that, like that sounds familiar.
well, it does because Indiana, like even looking at the end of the regular season, they were kind of the hot team. It's like, oh, watch out for the Pacers, watch out for the Pacers. They come into the playoffs. The first game of the playoffs, I mean, it was a dismantling of the Milwaukee Bucks. Like it was the first game of the playoffs at noon, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and they dismantled the Bucks. The Pacers came in there and made it kind of like we talked about the series beforehand, and when we talked about it, we all took the Pacers, but we all talked about like, oh yeah, this should be Indiana. But then there was also talk about, oh, from other sources, it could be close. It could be close. From the first game, we knew it wasn't going to be a close series between the Pacers and the Bucks. The Pacers steamrolled them, and then once the Pacers stole the first two games in Cleveland, specifically, I mean, obviously that game two, but even game one, coming back in that game, winning it down the stretch with a couple of big Andrew Nimhard shots. That's a series right there where Indiana took control early and just blew out Cleveland the rest of the way. Now there was one game in there Cleveland was able to grab, but then all the other games it wasn't necessarily close. I mean, that game four for Cleveland was a travesty. That game four, I mean, it was done by halftime. Cleveland was down by 41 points at halftime. I mean, Jesus, that was I mean that's what happened in that Pacers Cavs series. So the trend, right? The Knicks tiptoeing with the Pistons, tiptoeing with the Celtics, taking advantage of them in nefarious ways. The Pacers certainly have the trend on their side right now, aside from the Knicks. But I also look at just the general rosters, right? The construction of the rosters. The Pacers do feel comfortable playing 10, 11 guys. Now, I think that could be shortened again to 8 players in this series. I see Shepard, Walker, Bryant getting less minutes in this series and the rotation shortening to 8. But regardless, even if the rotation is at 8 for Indiana, Rick Carlisle, he has the comfortability to grab, oh, a ninth guy, a 10th guy, an 11th guy. It's like, oh, insert him into the 8. He has the ability to do that. Rick Carlisle with the Indiana Pacers. Meanwhile, Tom Thibodeau, is he looking at Cameron Payne? Is he looking at Precious Achua? Like that's a classic. I know the Knicks where they're at right now. It's like, oh, there's a lot of praise for the Knicks. But when we look at the NBA playoffs, it's about styles of play, versatility. How many ways can you play in an NBA playoff series? The Pacers in this series can give out more looks because they have just period point blank. They have more guys than the New York Knicks, and for whatever the
At the
top of the
bottom half,
roster.
though. At top half, it might lean New York. No, the
Well, that's what I
first
was going to
four.
say. Is you could certainly say at the top half it does lean a little bit New York, but then for the rest of the roster, it's like, oh, Indiana can insert so many different combinations and guys and different styles of play to where maybe they unlock a code in the series that the Knicks can't necessarily crack. Which last series, that's what was so disappointing about last series is the Celtics, the lack of complexity and I would say innovation within the Celtics systems on both ends of the floor, particularly on the offensive end. I mean, it failed them last series, and the Knicks took advantage of that. I think in this series against the Knicks, or I think in this series, the Knicks facing the Pacers, they're probably not going to see that lack of innovation. They're not going to see. Also, too, the Celtics were injured by the end of that playoff run, and even during the playoff run, like you think about the top three most talented players on the Celtics: Tatum, Brown, Porzingis. Tatum, he was available the first 4 games. Okay, before talk about injuries, talk about his Achilles tear. He was available for the first 4 games. I'm not even counting him in this conversation, although 5 and 6 is certainly valid. Porzingis and Brown were not healthy in that series whatsoever. And even Drew Holiday, he missed the end of the Magic series with a hamstring injury. Sam Hauser, he missed most of this Knicks series, the Knicks Celtics series, with an ankle injury. So that was 5 guys out of the Celtics, basically 8-man rotation, 8-9-man rotation, 5 guys who weren't healthy. So the versatility for the Celtics was very much waning, obviously, at the end of the series when Jason Tatum is gone. But even when Jason Tatum was in the lineup, that team, number one, the Celtics weren't as complex as the Pacers, and we've seen that all season long play out. But on top of that, the Pacers, they have the healthy bodies. They're essentially 11 deep, 10 deep. The Celtics, on the other hand, we were like, oh, yeah, they're 8-9 deep. But in reality, 5 of those 8-9 guys were injured and they were not playing to the best of their capabilities. So I think in this next series, too, you could see New York run into that against Indiana and Indiana have an advantage there. But you do mention the top of the rosters. I think New York could have a big advantage with the starting 5 in general, because I think New York's starting 5 is a better defensive unit. I think they're a more physical unit. I think they're a better rebounding unit. Obviously, I mean, you have Towns. He's more versatile, in my opinion, than Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam, especially on the offensive end of the floor. Now, you could say Siakam and Turner, they have more of the defensive advantage over Towns, but offensively, Towns has that advantage over them. But then Bridges, Anunoby, and Hart, it's going to be like this series. I would not be surprised if there's some chippiness, there's some fighting in this series,
Oh
because
yeah.
you have Halliburton, McConnell, Nimhard, Matherin, and then on the other end, it's like Brunson, McBride, Hart, Bridges, and like there are guys in
Can I
this
say
series that
this
I just
too?
feel are going to go at each other.
Going at your defensive, I think New York, talking about defensive standpoint in New York, they're a
They can
phenomenal
be very
isolation.
gimmicky. We were talking about that with the Lakers at the beginning of the playoffs. They can be very gimmicky.
They can, and I feel like when that defensive core was built off isolation defense, right? Bridges, Anunoby, Hart. Those are your 3 kind of cornerstones. Hart's phenomenal off ball, but it gets dicey with New York once you start getting them moving, right? Once you start getting those off ball actions, they start to kind of look a little bit different. Boston did none of that. But Boston, right, like New York, if you go back and
Game
watch
three
those
and
regular season
five.
games, yeah, they started doing it, right? But you go back and watch the regular season games talking about Boston, New York, why Boston was 4-0, there was constant movement. It was high pick and roll into backside actions. There were actions, right? There was movement. New York last series, credit to them. They took advantage of it. Sat down, phenomenal isolation team, right? You're trying to go at Bridges, you try to go at Anunoby, you try to go at these guys, these bigger guys. Robinson's phenomenal off ball too. I got to give him credit. You're gonna have trouble. Indiana, if they go isolation, right, which we haven't seen, that is not who Indiana is, right? They're the complete opposite of that. But if Indiana falls into this isolation trap that they might think, right, go at Brunson, go at Towns all this time and isolate them, you're kind of playing into New York's hand. Yes, they are your weakness, but they know how to defend isolation, right? It's kind of what they do. If Indiana starts getting the ball flying, right, and really starts moving that ball, it could look tough for New York to defend them. It could. And the same goes for Indiana. I mean, Indiana's got some weaknesses on defense that New York can attack. And New York attacks it in a much different manner. It's much more drive, isolation. But I do think that's important. It's like when you look at the defense, what Indiana Pacers team are you going to get, right? You're going to, those habits of that first half of Indiana show up and it's like this complete offensive mess? Because that, we can't ignore that. That still happened this year, right? Or you're going to get the past 60 games of Indiana, 50, where it's just been like balls flying everywhere, where New York might struggle against that.
Yeah, I think I think just these two teams. What stands out to me in this series too, like I just sometimes I'm like, am I looking at the wrong or right things here? I just the physicality of New York in this series, I I almost believe in the Knicks physicality over the Pacers. Now that's not saying
100%. I back you up on that too. 100%.
and that's not to say I don't believe in, say, the Pacers mentality and what they could do in this series, but I could just see New York bullying them in certain ways in this series. Although it's like offensively, this is I just think it's going to be a fairly, I think it's going to be a fairly close series. I Indiana is just sometimes tough because their size, like the guys who have size on Indiana, right? Siakam, Turner, and you could even say Toppin, Walker, and Thomas Bryant. They're not the best defensive core at the top there at their big man slots. They're not
Yeah.
the best defensive core. And then the rest of the guys who you think, okay, these guys are all solid defenders. Defenders. You have Halliburton, Imhard, Neesmith, Matherin, and even McConnell down there at the guard positions and forward slots. It's like those guys, even for as good as they are on defense, they lack a little bit of size. They lack a little bit of physicality within that core. So the core in which you're thinking, oh, here's the size and physicality. Defensively, they're a little shaky. Meanwhile, some of your better defenders, they lack that size and physicality. And on the other end, I just think the Knicks, with their defense, obviously they have that size and physicality. And then offensively, to me in this series, I think somebody like Carl Anthony Towns could be the massive difference because if Carl Anthony Towns outplays Turner and Siakam, like this could be a wrap for the New York Knicks.
Oh yeah.
And but here's the thing, Carl Anthony Towns, it's not guaranteed he ever does that. I mean, we know his capabilities on the offensive end of the floor, and we saw it come out against the Celtics. The rebounding against the Celtics was, I mean, it was a lot better for the standard of Carl Anthony Towns in the playoffs than we've seen in the past. I thought he played one of his best playoff series against the Celtics in these past semifinals, and if he does that again in this series, to me, defensively there are still massive concerns with Towns. Um, but it's like, okay, for Indiana, how are they going to attack that? I will say, Indiana, if I'm looking at it from a mismatches standpoint, I think Indiana is going to do a lot better on the potential Robinson, Towns, Brunson mismatch opportunities for themselves because I can see a world where they're getting the mismatch on Halliburton, say at the top of the key, Halliburton has the ball. You're getting the mismatch on either Brunson, Towns, or Robinson, and then you're essentially sending Siakam or Turner into the pick and roll, and you're sending them on a guy like Hart, maybe like a guy like Josh Hart, maybe even Ananobi, or not Ananobi, but maybe Bridges in another situation. And so it's like, does that pull one of them off of another guy on the floor off the perimeter? And so I could just see the Knicks. I could see the Knicks defense not necessarily being as effective in this series against the Pacers just because of how the Pacers can kind of get around
Move the
defensive and
defense.
offensive
Right.
matchups, and just how they can move guys around to be less effective. So that's where, but this is where I think too, it's like this is going to be a tough series for guys like Siakam and Turner because both of those guys, I think, if you're trying to get switches on Towns and Robinson, it's like both of those guys could end up on Bridges, Anunoby, even Hart, and I think all three of them have the potential to actually guard them well. I mean, I think Siakam and Turner, a huge point last series was, oh well, these guys they're going to be meeting Evan Mobley and Jared Allen in the second round. Well, Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, I mean, first Evan Mobley didn't seem to be healthy. Secondly, it's like it didn't really affect them in that series. I do wonder if this time around, if some of these more active defenders, some of these more physical, athletic defenders, I wonder if it does disrupt some of the flow within Indiana's offensive system. So, you could look at it both ways. You could say Indiana, they're going to potentially take advantage of the mismatches against the Knicks better than the Celtics. But you could also look at it from the Knicks perspective and just say, well, some of the open lanes and some of the spacing in which the Pacers got last series and even the series before against the Milwaukee Bucks, it might not be there in this series against the Knicks because the
Right.
Knicks just their defensive core is just a little bit better than what the Pacers have seen thus far. And as far as the Cleveland Cavaliers go, it's like I couldn't deny the Cleveland Cavaliers were good all season long, but at the same time, I never really believed in the Cavs defense. It's like they were obviously
Indiana man, right here. Indiana man, right here. I was on that. Just saying. Sorry, continue.
no, you're right though. It's like the Cavs defense, like you look back at it, it's like, oh, great numbers, but the personnel, I was like, how much size? It's like again that dog mentality. It's like Cleveland and Boston's like, oh, they had all the talent and the versatility and all these great advantages. But then it's like when it came down to the mentality and activity of either team, it's like the Pacers and Knicks clearly beat both of them. And that's what I just think in the next series is the Pacers are going to be facing a little bit more active of a defensive team, a little bit more physical of a defensive team, a little bit more sizable of a defensive team. So I just think this series, both teams are facing their best opponent of the playoffs so far. And I think, yes, we've come to a conclusion here that things are pointing a little bit towards Indiana here at this point in time. But just the way the Knicks have won every playoff game so far, I do look at that and go, is there a trend to that? Is there something special to the Knicks right now? And can they just keep winning like that, right? Just keep
Right.
winning of, oh, we're keeping games close, we're winning in crunch time. Or it just seems like they're on a magical playoff run right now. And that's what I also look out for in the playoffs is, oh yeah, who are the teams who are just constantly defeating the variance out there? Who are the teams
Right.
constantly defeating the variance? But before we move on to the next playoff series here, any lasting thoughts on this Knicks Pacers series?
Yes, I'm happy you asked. I had one more thing to play off your defense. Credit to New York because they knew coming into that series against Boston that Boston was going to hunt Towns in that Tatum matchup, and they knew how Boston was going to do it, and they handled it very, very well. The Anunoby was phenomenal in that high pick and roll action, pick and fade. Mind you, Boston stopped running it, but they were phenomenal in that action to keep Anunoby or Bridges on Tatum. They did a phenomenal job. Boston tried to get a little bit more creative with the action to get Towns or Brunson over. They didn't. So when I'm looking at Indiana in finding the mismatch and taking advantage of that, how creative can you get? Because New York showed that they're going to study you. They're going to find how you like to attack mismatches, and they're going to be ready for it. Can Indiana and Carlisle, and this goes back to your point on to expect to see more creativity out of the Pacers, how creative can you get in attacking those mismatches, right? This is a Knicks team that is now almost 100 or 90 games in, right, to the Towns and Brunson core. They know that teams are going to attack them. They know how a lot of teams go after them. How creative can you get, right? It's the Eastern Conference Finals. Knicks got a lot of footage on the Indiana Pacers and how to attack mismatches. They're going to be ready for it. You got to come out with something new because if you don't, New York, they're going to see it and they're going to take advantage of it and they're going to play it very, very well.
100%. And looking over at the other side of the bracket, to the Western Conference Finals here. Now,
Woo-hoo.
I look at these two teams and go, wow, we should have seen this coming because last season, the top 3 seeds in the West. Number 1, Oklahoma City. Number 2, Denver. Number 3, Minnesota, right? And who's in the semifinals this year? Oh, right. Oklahoma City, Minnesota, Denver, as well as the Golden State Warriors, of course, with Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green. No surprise there whatsoever. But now in the conference finals, the Timberwolves and Thunder, they break through, and they were you think about last year, right? The top 3 seeds of the West. These were 2 of the younger squads. They were 2 of the newer squads. You know, Denver, they won the title the year before. They were making their push for the number 1 seed. They were a known entity. They had already grabbed the 1 seed in the past. But the year before, people forget, Minnesota and Oklahoma City played each other in the 2023 play-in game to see who was going to make the playoffs. That was the battle of the 8 seed. I don't remember. I think OKC, they were either 9 or 10, and then Minnesota, they were 7 or 8 that year. And then both of those teams played for the right to play the Denver Nuggets in round 1 in 2023. Obviously, the Wolves won that game, went on to play the Nuggets in round 1. But then the next year, the Wolves and Thunder, they're at the top of the conference, tied for the number 1 seed last year. And now a year later, although the Wolves, they go through somewhat of a turbulent regular season, they're back at the top. They're seen as one of the more versatile teams in the West. And now they're here in the conference finals facing off against the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I just look at how things play out. It's like, regardless of the seeding, it feels like on both sides of the conference, right? It's like, oh, New York, Indiana, they were there in the second round last year. The same second round opponents. You look at the semifinals in the East. it was the same four teams in 2024 as 2025. It was the same exact four teams. And then on the other side, you had the Thunder and the Wolves. They were the up and coming teams last year. And now who's in the conference finals? Oh, it's the Thunder and the Wolves. And I'm excited for this series because I think whoever wins this series is going to capture a certain narrative in the NBA that, we see it. We saw it with the Celtics this last year where, oh, they win a title and, oh, everything goes through Boston. You can't win the championship unless you defeat this player, or aka Jason Tatum, or if you defeat the Boston Celtics, you got to defeat either one of those, right? Or the same. I guess they're the same thing. But as for the Western Conference, I think whoever wins this series, they're going to capture that narrative. It's going to be, oh, in the West, you have to go through SGA and the Thunder, or you have to go through Anthony Edwards and the Timberwolves. I think that's going to happen from this series. But just looking at it, again, we were looking at it from just a pure reaction perspective in the Eastern Conference Finals. For the Western Conference Finals, Rob, what are your initial thoughts on this series?
It's gonna be a good one. I agree. I will say this: Minnesota here. This is their second year getting there. So props to them. They here last year. They fell short to Dallas. Obviously, they got there again. So credit there. Oklahoma City also credit goes to them. Tough 7 games against a Denver team that was very experienced. That were making some big time plays. So it's going to be interesting. And I think this series is a little bit more complex than the Knicks Pacers series, because I think when you look at Minnesota in particular, have they really needed to play their best basketball yet? I think is like a main question. Have we seen them do it in the postseason? I don't know really, because of who they kind of have seen. Now they've taken advantage of that, and that's a credit to them. But I look at OKC and they truly are like, so the 40-20 rule, I want to go back to that. The Thunder right now are the only 40-20 team left, right? If that is going to stand strong, it's going to stand strong here in this series. So I look at this series from like a reaction standpoint. That's my reaction. And then from a basketball standpoint, this is a star driven one. I think this is more star driven than the Knicks Pacers one is. Halliburton versus Brunson, and then but this one, SGA versus Ant. What you could be seeing here are the two catalysts for the Western Conference facing off for the first times of their career, which could potentially this could be the first of many that they see each other in the playoffs. And I look at that, and that to me is going to be the deciding factor of this series. Which star comes and shows out? And last year, you want to talk about last year, Luka was the guy. Luka was the star in the West, and he took advantage of the moment. He got Rudy Gobert in that isolation, and he torched Minnesota. Right now, I'm looking at SGA. I'm looking at Ant. I'm saying, which one of you two young stars who have yet to be in the NBA Finals, which one of you want it more? That's what it's going to come down to in this series. I will say it's going to take more out of Anthony Edwards. And I do think that when I look at that and the complexion of these two teams, right? You look at Minnesota, they got Ant, they got Julius Randle, who's been playing some phenomenal playoff basketball. You love to see that. And then from there, there's kind of a drop off. It goes Jaden McDaniels, who has his moments and is a stud on defense and has some offensive explosion. And then it goes Naz Reid, who's again a stud, a star in his role, but they start to thin out a little bit. The more and more you go. Look at a team like Oklahoma City, and Shea has more wiggle room. Okay, Shea might not have it tonight. You got Jalen Williams, you got Chet. The list goes on, and these guys who can step up. Kaysen Wallace is a guy off the bench, come in and can torch you from behind the arc. So I think SGA in this matchup has a little bit more wiggle room in the star power. And I also will say this, before I get into my little quick prediction, I will say that I do think this series has an opportunity to be a bloodbath in favor of OKC. I see that world, right? You said it last series, and I agreed with you. I don't see a world where the Pacers go in and just mollywop the Knicks, right? You probably, and vice versa. You get the sense that that's going to be a dogfight of a series. I do think the talent dispersity in OKC's success in the regular season, right, and that experience factor really isn't there quite yet. You got two teams with pretty similar experience in the playoffs. I could see a world where this is like Thunder in 5. I'm going to say Thunder in 6 or 7. I'm going to go 6. but I do see a war. And 6 is my safe number. I don't know if you've noticed that. If I don't know, or if I'm not confident in one, it's like, okay, 6, right? Like that's like the 6 is like in my head is like the safe. I don't see it being a sweep. I think it's, I'm going to go 5. I'm going to say Thunder in 5. I'm going to say Thunder in 5 because I do think what the test and the answers to the test have shown us, OKC has seen a little bit more talent. I think they've handled themselves very well. I don't know.
Okay, so number one, this is, again, you compare the two teams. The Thunder are just a little bit deeper than the Minnesota Timberwolves. The Minnesota Timberwolves off the bench: Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and Naz Reid. That's it. Now, those are 3 very good players to bring off the bench, but that is a solid 8-man rotation. After that, you are seriously, this is not a, oh, I can, like the Indiana Pacers, they can feel confident in selecting their 9, 10, 11 guy and like inserting them into the 8-man rotation. This Minnesota Timberwolves situation right now, they do not have a 9th guy, a 10th guy, an 11th guy. If any one of these guys get hurt during the series, starter, the Wolves are down to 7 guys. And if one of these guys, too, 1, 2 of them become ineffective, again, the Wolves are down to 6, 7 guys in the series. Meanwhile, I think the Thunder, they feel confident in playing what? 5. They're also on the line of 10, 11 guys. They can easily, if they wanted to go down and say, oh, Isaiah Joe, we're going to insert you into the lineup for a game. Kenrich Williams, Jalen Williams, we've seen him a lot. Aaron Wiggins, he plays quite a bit for the Thunder. Any of these guys on the back end of the Thunder rotation, the Thunder have the ability to insert the back end of the rotation into the normal rotation, into the top half of the rotation, and feel comfortable with that. Meanwhile, the Minnesota Timberwolves don't have that. And I think what's also going against the Timberwolves here is just the general versatility. And again, we talked about the options that teams have on their roster. If you look at the guard matchups, right? So one of Minnesota's strengths is their guards, right? Conley, Edwards, DiVincenzo, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Look on the other end, however. SGA, Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, those 4 guards right there. I mean, they are going to be tough defensive matchups for guys like Conley, Edwards, especially Anthony Edwards in this series, Dante DiVincenzo, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And if Edwards is off the floor, Conley, DiVincenzo, or Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and even, let's face it, I mean, Julius Randle, he does a good deal of creating offense for the Minnesota Timberwolves in a way that I would say is not the most efficient way, but hey, it's the Julius Randle way, and it's worked in the past. But you just have some really, really tough matchups defensively if you're the Wolves. And if you're looking at it on the other end, I would say SGA, it's like, does he really fear DiVincenzo, McDaniels as much as, say, Edwards? You look at SGA, Cason Wallace, Lou Dort, Caruso, Jalen Williams, just looking at the guards, right? I just think OKC, they have a more elite guard unit on both ends of the floor. You have your superstar MVP candidate in SGA, and obviously the Wolves have that in Anthony Edwards too. But then if you just whittle it down from a defensive perspective, I just think the Thunder have more on that end of the floor, because I think Conley, for as effective as Conley can still be at this point in his career, I mean, I think OKC could make him look like an old man in this series, unfortunately. I think that's definitely on the table for that happening because of the guard rotation in which OKC has and the amount of defensive options they can throw at Conley. This could be one of those series where it's like, oh, Conley, he looks like a Holiday, he looks like a Horford out there. It's like, oh, very, very effective player for the Timberwolves in general and can be in the regular season. But when you're facing such an elite unit, a young unit as well, I mean, this Thunder team, they're very young. If you're facing that unit in the playoffs, that could be a situation where, oh, Conley, he kind of fades off into the abyss and isn't as effective. Meanwhile, Edwards, that's going to mean increased pressure on Anthony Edwards, and then coming off the bench, DiVincenzo and Na. Both of those guys, to me, I like DiVincenzo and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. The only thing about them is if Conley is going to be ineffective in this series, and if he's going to be, hounded by some of these other guards on OKC, I just think where does the ball handling and offensive initiation come from the Timberwolves? And I should have mentioned this about I'll even mention this too about the Pacers Knicks series, even though we moved on. The Pacers in the Pacers Knicks series, they have more offensive options. They simply have more offensive options. You look at Halliburton, McConnell, Nimhard, Siakam, all Matherin as well. Offensive options for the Pacers. Meanwhile, for the Knicks, no players off the Knicks bench. None of those players are offensive options. It's Brunson and Towns. Those are your main offensive initiators. And if the Pacers they find a way to slow that down, they're going to have a huge offensive advantage in that series. Well, that point also relates to this series with the Thunder, because I think if you look at Conley and Edwards, if Conley is not as effective in the series, and Edwards, there's increased pressure on him, where is the rest of the offense coming from? Is it coming from guys like Nas Reed, McDaniels, Julius Randle? I mean, to me, DiVincenzo and Nikhil Alexander Walker, for as great as they can be as players on the floor and their versatility and hitting shots and driving the ball hard to the rim and playing phenomenally on the defensive end of the floor, for as great as they can be as role players, I don't really see them as big offensive initiators, big shot creators for themselves. And that's kind of where I look at the matchups of the guards in this series and go, oh, OKC, they have a little bit of an advantage here because I think they just have the better elite guard unit who could take out more of Minnesota's guards than Minnesota could take out from OKC, because even you add in Isaiah Joe to that mix as well, and Aaron Wiggins. I mean, all these guys are versatile. I mean, Jalen Williams, Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe. Didn't really mention them too much. Even Kenrich Williams. I mean, they can all defend multiple positions. They could go down and defend those guards as well. Meanwhile, I just think even though Minnesota, they're a sound defensive unit, I don't see their unit being as effective against OKC's unit of guys on the offensive end of the floor as OKC will be defensively against Minnesota in this series. But also just looking at the top, what's so interesting about this series too is you have some of the best rim protectors in the NBA meeting in this series. You have Chet Holmgren on one end of the floor, and then you have Rudy Gobert on the other end. Both of those guys are going to show some of the best big man elite defensive performances we've seen all season long in this series. I think that's what we're going to see out of Holmgren and Gobert. They're the two most efficient shot deters by the rim in the NBA. So both teams have that advantage going for them. I do think Minnesota has the chance to be the better rebounding team in this series potentially. Maybe with a little bit more size there at the top. You look at Nas Reed, Randall, Gobert, McDaniels, Hardenstein, Jalen Williams, both Jalen Williams and Holmgren. It's like I feel like there's a little bit more size there for Minnesota at the top. Not by much, but just a little bit. I wonder if Hardenstein is taken out in this series in some ways because of Randall, Gobert, and Reed's ability to defend. I could see Hardenstein being less effective by the rim. We think about Hardenstein. There's a lot of dunker spot opportunities, cuts to the rim where, I mean, the classic one is OKC. They're running that pick and roll at the top. SGA, he's splitting the screen coming downhill. He picks up that help defender, and oh, who's sitting there just fading in from the corner, cutting in from the corner, diving in from the corner? Oh, it's Isaiah Hardenstein, and boom, SGA's giving him a dump off pass and Hardenstein's putting that in for a dunk. And it's not only Hardenstein, but it's guys like Caruso, guys like Lou Dort as well. I can see that being taken away from OKC in this series. Just some of the rim presence that OKC seems to have in other matchups and other series. This is a series that OKC, I think some of that rim presence could go away for OKC. Some of those easy buckets could go away in the half court for OKC, knowing oh Gobert is down there, oh Reed's down there, Randall's down there, McDaniel's he's going to be a little bit more active inside the paint. Uh, but also, I think you look at OKC's offense, I still just have the general question of okay, Minnesota in crunch time. I believe in Anthony Edwards. I mean, we've seen it this playoff run. Anthony Edwards has been absolutely spectacular in crunch time. He's in the pot with Halliburton and Brunson and the guys who have been ultra clutch this playoff run. I believe in Edwards' ability to create points on the offensive end of the floor. I actually believe in not Gobert, Randall as well. I believe in Randall's ability to create offense for himself. and not as much for others, but definitely for himself. I just believe in him creating points. For OKC, there were moments in that Denver series where they looked a little bit tight, a little bit like it's like, oh, if it wasn't SGA, we talked about this in the regular season. Who else is it going to be? And it just felt like even the first two rounds of these NBA playoffs, you could say the second best player on the Oklahoma City Thunder, it's been Alex Caruso. I
Yeah.
mean, defensively for certain. If you looked at him from that perspective, but even offensively, it feels like there are big moments in games where it's like, oh, Oklahoma City, they just need a bucket right now. It's like Shea, and it's like, all right, who else is stepping up? And then who is it? Oh, it's Alex Caruso hitting a big three. It's Alex Caruso being aggressive, going downhill towards the rim. We saw in that Denver series, Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren. They were supposed to be your 2 and 3 if you're Oklahoma City. They're just not quite there yet. They're young guys. It's okay. It's not, detriments to their game, or we're not thrashing them, and we're not saying, oh, they're not the guys. They'll never be the guys. They're just young. They're just not quite there yet. They're in the same stage of their careers where Brown and Tatum, where they were in 2020 and 2019. So it's completely understandable that Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren, they haven't been able to necessarily step up to the plate and produce at, a second best player, a third best player on a team level on the offensive end of the floor. Defensively is a different story for the Thunder, but offensively, I just the Thunder. That's the one thing I look about. It's like offensively, they could have some trouble in this series if Shea is taken away, and then those other options are left to not necessarily take over, but hey, OKC needs a bucket. It's like, who is it coming from? Is it coming from Holmgren? Is it coming from Jalen Williams, Lou Dort? It just feels like Lou Dort and Caruso, they've taken over the reins of just, oh, we need a big shot right now. It's like, here, let me shoot it. Here, let me shoot it. But really, just the entirety of the OKC lineup, they have the most complete unit out of any team left. I think Minnesota, it's weird because New York and Indiana, it's like they both have evident flaws within their systems that to me make them like that's why they were the 3 and 4 seeds in the East this year. That's why we talked about them the way we did throughout the regular season. OKC, we knew they were a juggernaut all year long. As for Minnesota, I felt like coming into the second round out of Minnesota, Golden State, Houston, the picture started to become evident of, and even at the top of the bracket, you had the Clippers, the Nuggets, and the Thunder. They swept the first round, but you had the Thunder and the Timberwolves sitting there in the second round, waiting for the two game sevens to play out. And in that moment, I was thinking, Minnesota. Like you look at the rest of the bracket, it's like clearly right now, OKC and Minnesota, they're better units than every other. They have better units. They own better units than every other team left in the NBA playoffs. I think OKC has the certainly the best defensive unit, but I think they have some offensive questions. They have a deeper unit than Minnesota here, but I think Minnesota they could, for as weird as it is, like for as prolific as an offensive team as Oklahoma City was throughout this entire year, and for as many questions as I've had for Minnesota's offense ever since they added Rudy Gobert into their lineup, it's a little weird thinking, okay, Minnesota, maybe because of the Randall factor and just having him and Edwards in there, it's like maybe they'll be able to be a little bit better on the offensive end of the floor. Although OKC, I just look at their roster, I think defensively, they're really every time I look at OKC's roster, I just think of transition, just activity. And in the half court, it's like OKC, even in the half court, they play quick, they play up tempo, they play very physically in the half court, and or I should say quickly in the half court. Um, I just Minnesota, I believe in their roster, but it's just the depth that's really killing it for me. It's like
Right.
look at Oklahoma City's depth, look at Minnesota's depth. It's like Oklahoma City can play in so many different ways. They, and I don't know if you mentioned this point already yet or not, but it's like Oklahoma City too. This is kind of going to be off the point of picking Oklahoma City, but it's like this also factors into this whole series is Oklahoma City. You said it before we even came in here. It's like Oklahoma City has seemingly played a tougher path. Like Memphis had to come back down from 29 points, pulled out that close game four, play a 7 game series against the Nuggets. Meanwhile, on the other end, the Timberwolves, they made light work of both the Lakers and the Warriors, and now they are where they're at. So that's why it's kind of, we talk about the trend thing on the other side of the bracket with the Pacers. and the Pacers and the Knicks, that's where this trend thing also comes into play with Minnesota and
Right.
OKC. Minnesota is clearly trending in the upward direction. Meanwhile, you could say OKC, they just lost 3 games to Denver. I mean, they lost 14 games all year long. And so they just
Right.
lose 3 in a series to the same opponent. I could certainly sit here and say Minnesota might have a little bit more advantage in terms of the trend. However, just looking at how both rosters are structured and the defenses that come into play, I think defensively, this is where I want to just I'm trying to find ways here of I think both teams have flaws to themselves that you could go, oh, is this going to be like, is this play like the biggest flaw for OKC is like where's your offense coming from? Who are the guys stepping up if SGA has an off night or if SGA is taken out of a game because of foul trouble or whatever it may be? Who are the other guys within that situation? And then for Minnesota, it's like, okay, is the versatility, is the depth, is that going to be enough to beat Oklahoma
Right.
City? Is this going to be enough in that circumstance? I want to see another 7 gamer here. I want to see another seven.
Oh,
I think if Denver can take Oklahoma City to 7, why can't Minnesota? Minnesota was looking at Denver going, give us Denver. We know we can beat Denver. Hell, we beat Denver last year. We beat Denver in the regular season. We know we can beat Denver. Minnesota, they get Oklahoma City. This isn't a playoff series we've seen, but I think Oklahoma City, Denver was able to. I mean, this is again where the trends come into play. I think Denver, they were a well coached team clearly at the end of the season with David Adelman. I mean, what the job he did, amazing, just absolutely amazing, playing 14 playoff games, coached the last 3 games of the regular season. Nobody was expecting David Adelman to coach 17 games this year. Denver was able to scheme together that series with a lesser roster and to me a way lesser roster than Minnesota will have in this series. And I just think Minnesota, it's like they're a well coached team as well. They have more pieces than Denver. Their confidence is through the roof. They're resting. Let's also throw this out. Game 1 is tonight between these two teams. Oklahoma City just played a game 7 48 hours ago.
yeah, they got they
48
got
hours
they
ago.
got a
Meanwhile,
got belted
Minnesota
that
played
in.
what, 5 days ago? You have
Right.
5 days of rest versus a day of rest. That is going to play into this series, and that's where I could see. Oh, the Wolves win game 1. That's a game they steal. Maybe Oklahoma City has a little bit of the advantage the rest of the series, but Minnesota can push it to 7. I do see this as a 7 game series, and you know what? This is tough. You know what? I'm gonna pick the Timberwolves. I'm gonna pick the
Oh,
Timberwolves.
oh, bombshell, bombshell,
And you know
bombshell.
why?
Wow.
You know
Okay.
why? You know why? You know why? And you're gonna hate this point. You're just gonna absolutely hate this point. And all after all of what I said, OKC better defensive unit, all these advantages. Minnesota, number one, they're gonna have the rest coming into the series, so I think they're gonna grab game 1. But Anthony Edwards
Oh boy, here we go. Here
is
we go.
going
Here we
in my mind.
go.
I'm like, I see the perfect scenario and sphere aligning right now of Anthony Edwards is about to grab the narrative for himself. Last year was like, oh, here comes Edwards, and then he's taken out in the conference finals. Like, not quite yet. Not quite there yet. This season, it's like, okay, last year he beat Kevin Durant in round 1. Round 2 beats Nikola Jokic. Round 3 loses to Luka Doncic. This year comes back, beats both LeBron and Luka in round 1. So it's like, okay, take care of that Luka demon and take out LeBron. And then in round 2, it's like, okay, Steph Curry, unfortunately, didn't play the series. That's unfortunate. Outside of game 1, the first half of game 1. But he takes out Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green, the old guard of the Warriors. And now it's like, well, who else is in his way in the West? It's like he's just taking out all of the typical names in the West. Who else is in his way? Oh, it's SGA. And like this is the series where it's like we were talking about, oh, is the new guard taking over? Is the old guard still here? Oh no, the new guard is here in the West. Anthony Edwards and
Literally,
Shea
dude,
Gilgeous
guard,
Alexander facing off in the
guard.
conference finals is a sign of the new guard taking over in the West because this could be your Western Conference Finals the next. I don't want to say the next couple of years, but last year you saw the Wolves in the conference finals. I wouldn't be surprised if again you saw either the Wolves or the Thunder in the conference finals again next year, because especially the Thunder with how young and how many assets they just have on their in their within their arsenal. But I think this is the moment for Anthony Edwards to. It's like I feel like his top rival in the West is actually Shea. Like for whatever anybody wants to say about anybody else, it's Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. Those are the two
Right.
up and coming best players in the West. I mean, you can obviously, there are other great players in the West, but those are the two, if you want to talk about face of the NBA, it's like these are the two guys right now. And I could 100% see Anthony Edwards just going, you know what, this is my series. In crunch time, I'm taking this over and I'm being the guy. That being said, it's going to be tough for Minnesota. I think they're going to need Anthony Edwards to be at a superhuman level. And I'll say this, I don't deny Anthony Edwards being at a superhuman level because so far, from looking at trends of just teams, forget teams, look at players. Anthony Edwards, this playoff run, I mean, some of the numbers and the highlight, just the film he's put on display for the public, I mean, it's some all-time stuff. It's some all-time stuff. And I think in this series, he could be the difference for Minnesota if he just comes out and plays one of his best playoff series of his entire life. And then just in crunch time, I think I could see OKC getting a little tight. Like I could see in game 7, OKC getting a little tight as they did against Denver. But this time around, it's like, oh, Denver just started to collapse. It's like Denver throughout that game. It's like everything just started to fall off the wheels started to fall off the cart for Denver. I don't know if that's going to happen to Minnesota. I think Anthony Edwards, like that motivational factor and just himself alone on the court, I think that could come into play in a game 7. Although, same people, I shouldn't say same people. Some people said the same thing about Nikola Jokic maybe in that game 7 against the Thunder. But I'm going to take the Timberwolves in 7. I honestly, I feel better about OKC's team than I do the Timberwolves. But I just come clutch time, we've seen in the playoffs, it's like, oof. I want to. I just believe in Anthony Edwards more than anybody else. Straight up, that's just what I believe in.
I'm gonna
I can't explain it. It's like I see. Even though I'm like every objective reason is telling me the Thunder outside of the rest. It's like I cannot deny this special player the NBA has right now. It's like Anthony Edwards. He's a special player.
I'm gonna say this. If you're correct, and Anthony Edwards is able to beat this Oklahoma City Thunder team, then his trajectory really is going to be something special. The harsh truth of this series is that Anthony Edwards is about to run into or is running into a historically good Oklahoma City Thunder team. The
Especially
Thunder,
defensively.
I mean, this Thunder team, let's not let this narrative kill just how good this Oklahoma City Thunder team is. You might ask, oh, how did Denver get it to 7? They have the 3-time MVP, right? Jokic may not be the face, but let's not forget, Nikola Jokic is the planet's best basketball player, and it's not relatively close. I mean, Jokic in this series averaged 28 points, 14 rebounds, 6 assists, shooting 50% from the floor. He actually struggled from behind the arc, 32% from 3. But it would have to take a generational performance in 7 games, like you said, right? And this is what I think. You're absolutely on the money, right? If it is going to take over, and if this is going to happen, the Anthony Edwards show, it will be in 7 games, right? You nailed in that scenario. I don't know if that scenario is possible, though, just from how
I know. The more I think about it, I'm like, you know what? I fell into this trap on the other side of it in the first round series. I'm like, Luka and LeBron and JJ Redick. It's like, man, I just see them crafting up quite a series. And then it's like, you look at it and you're like, man, they really have no big guy. They're playing the same 5 guys. LeBron is 40. Luka is out of shape. It's like, against they're like, you're sitting there like, okay, maybe the stars don't
maybe it
matter.
makes sense.
No, I could see in this series 100%. Like when I look at OKC, it's like, what do I think about? It's like fast, quick team, athletic team, up and down the floor, very sound defensively, and then offensively, just a lot of cutting, a lot of off-ball action. Shea at the top of the key. I could see in this series, like, oh, like in game 2, it's like, oh no, Edwards has been hounded for 2 games, and Gobert is ineffective. He's getting played off the floor. Now Minnesota has 7 guys in their rotation, and one of those guys, it's like they're playing Naz Reid at the big man slot, and they don't have a backup big man. And I could definitely see that in this series.
Right.
But it's just like I just look at it too, and you mentioned, the Knicks. It's like, oh, they shouldn't have gone to 6 games with the Detroit Pistons. I kind of look at the Denver
That Denver
OKC
series.
series as the same
Mhm.
way for Oklahoma City, where I'm like, okay, I believed in Denver at the end of the season, even though they were kind of tank. Like if you look at the end of the year, right before Mike Malone got fired, it was like, ooh, Denver was kind of on the downtrend anyway. Obviously, they changed that trajectory in the playoffs with 2 7-game series, but I just the squad Denver had, right? It's like the starting five was already a primitive starting five from the past, right? Where you have the four guys Denver absolutely believes in: Jokic, Murray, Porter, and Gordon. Those are the four guys Denver absolutely believes in. After that, Denver is playing a bunch of guys who they didn't necessarily believe in. Christian Brown, I think he boosted his status a little bit more, but originally he was a guy that Denver was kind of on the fence about. And then you have Russell Westbrook coming off the bench for Denver. You have Julian Strother, Peyton Watson coming off the bench, and just the bench unit for Denver. It wasn't it's like like this is not a very versatile unit. Like I mean it was pointed out at the beginning of the season with the Denver Nuggets, but I just thought in the playoffs, obviously you had the Strother game in game 6 play out with Denver. But outside of that, I just felt like Denver's role players, like even in that series, Russell Westbrook was awful in that series. I mean, he was great in that Clippers series. That's what the feast or famine really came out with Russell Westbrook this year, considering just the fact like it's every game with Westbrook where you're thinking, oh, in the fourth quarter, it's like, oh, big shot from Westbrook, and then on the other end, it's like, oh, and he fouls like in that Minnesota Timberwolves game, it's like, oh, great steal, Russell Westbrook, oh, misses the layup and then fouls in
Yeah.
3. It's like, okay, but he did that in the playoffs, like, oh my, great series against the Clippers, and then against the Thunder, it's like, wow, what was that? Uh, but yeah, it's like the Thunder, or it's not the Thunder bench. Look now, I was looking at Russell Westbrook's name, immediately was thinking about the Thunder. Russell Westbrook, Peyton Watson, Strother off the bench. That's 8 deep if you're the Nuggets. And then the starting lineup: Murray, Jokic, Brown, Gordon, and Porter. And again, Denver only believed in 4 of those guys. And I'll say this too: out of the 4, 2 were healthy. Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic were healthy. And even near the end of that series, Jamal Murray was dealing with an illness, as we've seen, just as like the worst injury. It's like worse than a torn ACL in the NBA now, apparently an illness. I just have no idea what's going on there. But at the end of that series, it's like, oh, they only have 4 guys they believe in, and Aaron Gordon's hamstring is done. Michael Porter Jr.'s shoulder is done. Murray is sick. Nikola Jokic, I mean, he can only do so much. And then the rest of the bench is like Westbrook, Watson, and Strother. It's like you really look at this Denver team. It's like, how did they take OKC to a game 7? They obviously stole game 1, and they outplayed Oklahoma City down the stretch in game 3. And then let's see, in game 6, you had the Strother game. They just pulled away that game. And I just look at Oklahoma City and go, if you drop these same games the way you did in this Minnesota series, like I think there's less room for error in this series against Minnesota. Where if OKC, if they're going to drop a crunch time game like they did in Denver on the road, or they're going to drop a game like they did in game 1 against Denver against Minnesota, I think Minnesota is going to have at least 1 or 2 games in this series where they pull it out decisively and not in a manner of, oh, this is a coin flip game. And so I just look at the Thunder and go, yes, they're young. They looked a little bit tight against Denver. Thought Denver that series should not have gone 7 with the 2 rosters meeting each other. But then again, you do see Oklahoma City in game 7 had an overwhelming advantage near the end of that series against Denver when it all came down to it. And I do wonder if that just takes over in this series against the Timberwolves, or if Oklahoma City continues to have some of those struggles of, all right, if it's not SGA, who else is stepping up here? We have a really young team. It's like, we have a lot of pieces, but if you have a lot of pieces, like they have to be doing something on the floor. They can't just be theoretical pieces that a team has, because we get caught up in that a lot too in the NBA, where it's like, wow, this team has 10, 11 guys, and then in reality it's like, oh, they have 7 because they don't believe in 4 of those 11 guys at the end. Oklahoma City, I think it's like my prediction for Minnesota in 7. It's like it's highly based on the fact that it's like OKC, I expect them to take care of business against Denver a little bit better than they did. I just see Anthony Edwards like this could be his breakthrough moment. I feel like this could be a moment where it's like, oh,
Right.
Anthony Edwards,
Which it
he's in
could
the
be. It
finals.
could be.
Because he was, I mean, you think Oklahoma City was kind of in the same situation last year, but Minnesota was here last year in the conference finals. Like, there has to be a motivation within them as well that it's like, we were here last year and we didn't get over that hump. Meanwhile, OKC, it's like last year, like they're on the same trajectory, but OKC last year, they lost in that second round to Luka and the Mavericks. Well, this season they get over that hump in game 7. And I wonder, is that going to be something that they look at and go, oh, great, we got over the hump? Or is that something they look at and go, oh, we're not going to have any fear the rest of the way? So I kind of look at that as well, for Oklahoma City, like which one could play out in that way. And if Minnesota, if like they're just going to be they're going to be more motivated in this conference finals. I mean, it's tough. I could see both ways. I could see OKC coughing up a game or two that they're meant to win, and Minnesota taking advantage there, and then maybe one of those games is a game 7 where Anthony Edwards takes over. But I could also see it's like, oh, by game 2, it's like, oh, of course, Oklahoma City, they're more versatile. They have more players. They have a better defense. Like, okay, they're just historically good. Oh, and then obviously you bring up the 40-20 rule. It's like, yeah, they're the only team left. And out of all the favorites this year, it's like Minnesota. Nobody was thinking Minnesota, Indiana, New York at the middle portion of the season. It was all about Oklahoma City, Cleveland, and Boston. So the fact that Oklahoma City is still around, I'll just give this prediction. I think it's going 7, and I think it's going to be close. That's what I'll say. And I think down the stretch in game 7, Anthony Edwards has the chance to take over, but I also wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma City just has more juice, and it might look like a Denver series where Minnesota is able to steal some of these games, right, and win one decisively. But then in the end, you just kind of look at it and go, oh, okay, see, they had more of the advantages over time. I don't know. I can never pick these series. It's like I can see like every scenario in my brain play out, and then I'm like, which one is the best? Like, do I go with the storyline? Do I go with the logic? Like, the logic has led us nowhere these playoffs, like absolutely nowhere. I mean, I should say a little bit, but it's like Denver and LA. It's like LA had the better team that series, like clearly had the better team. Coughed up game 1, just did not perform at the end, or I shouldn't say at the end. They came back in game 4 before that Aaron Gordon game winner. But you don't box out on that game winner if you're the Clippers and you allow a 17-point lead, or I believe it was 17 plus point lead for the Nuggets in that game 4. Game 5, you allow Jamal Murray a 40-point game, and just the Clippers. It was a mass fumbling away of that series. You go to the Eastern Conference. It was like, oh, of course, Boston and Cleveland, Boston and Cleveland. Boston and Cleveland, they won 3 games in the semifinals between the two of them. They didn't even win enough games between two of them to win a series. Like between both teams, they didn't win enough games. And then just I don't know. It's like you see things play out. It's a fair amount of both. It's like some things we expect to see play out, like Minnesota beating Golden State. It's like Golden State and Houston's like which one was going to play out over time. It felt like Golden State had the advantage, and Minnesota, LA, same way. So you kind of look at that end of the bracket and go, okay, those teams have kind of played out in the right way. But then all these other places like Denver, LA, that certainly didn't play out in a logical way. I felt like the Knicks and Celtics, the Cavs and Pacers, that those didn't play out in logical ways. I felt like even the Magic Celtics series was a lot harder for the Celtics over time, if we just want to look at our own team, unfortunately. And even the Knicks, you talk about the Knicks and Pistons series. The Knicks and Pistons series was, I would say, it was on par. Like I said, Knicks in 6, like I was on par with that. But the way the series went about for the Knicks, I was very surprised to see that. I was not thinking, oh, close game, close game, close game. I was thinking, okay, the Knicks have an advantage. The Pistons are going to steal a game or two here, but then, you'll see an overwhelming, advantage for the Knicks in other regards. You just didn't see that. So it's like, do I take the logic here? Do I take a view of storyline, a view of what I like? I try to look at things of what I could see happening. Like, oh, here's the logic, but then it's like, I could see Anthony Edwards in the finals. I could see Anthony Edwards just having himself a Michael Jordan-esque series in this manner. And maybe I'm not talking enough about SGA like that right now, because it could easily be SGA. Like I'm just in this Western Conference Finals. I gotta say, I like both of these teams. I know we disagree on this point, but I like both of these teams. Like
We
SGA,
did. We did.
I've
We
been
did.
on him since Kentucky. I didn't know he was going to be an MVP. I'll say that. I'm not taking credit for predicting MVP status for SGA, but I remember everybody was looking at Kevin Knox, and I'm going, but look at SGA and PJ Washington. It's like these are NBA guys too. And then on the other end, Anthony Edwards. Got to give a shout out to my guy, What's on Tap NBA at What's on Tap NBA on Instagram. My guy James Wilder Adams. We talked about it literally 5 years ago, 4 years ago, when Anthony Edwards was a rookie, second year guy. We're going, I think the personality of this player is just going to lead him to success alone. Like forget all the great ability Anthony Edwards has. The personality, the leadership is there with an Anthony Edwards. So the fact that both of these players, SGA, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and Anthony Edwards, are meeting in a conference final series, I think this is very, very fitting for the NBA in this scenario. And quite frankly, it's like I just hate that I have to pick. Like, why do we have to pick all the time? Why do we have to make predictions all the time with this? Like,
Right.
why does everybody want to know the future? Just enjoy the present. Come on, folks. Just watch the damn games. Because this guy, like these conference finals, for it's for as heartbroken as I am over the Celtics not being involved in these conference finals. I gotta say, I'm pretty excited. I don't want to see the Knicks win. I'm gonna be straight up about that. I do not want to see the New York Knicks win the NBA finals. I can't deny their ability that they could potentially do that, but I just think it's going to be fun. Like OKC versus Minnesota, New York, Indiana. Like this is fun, and we don't have the stress of like, is Porzingis going to be available and like Tatum and Brown's knee and all that. It's like no, we just get to watch other
They
teams
ripped the
deal with all that
Band-Aid. They ripped the
nonsense.
Band-Aid, right? Yeah. I'm going to say this real quick. It's actually funny before I say this. For those you guys, we weren't live yet. Literally before we came into the show, I was like, I don't really care what happens out east. Like I wouldn't mind if the Knicks made it the NBA finals. They haven't done it in so long. I care about the West because it's a lose-lose for me. And Shane was like, I'm actually the direct opposite of that. I don't care what happens in the West. It's a win-win. I just don't want the Knicks to win. And
Yeah,
it was
literally.
funny that polar opposite ends, literally polar opposite end of the spectrum from Seamus and I's conference finals use. I want to say this though. Both conference finals, just real quick. I as a whole, I picked Indiana. I picked Oklahoma City out west, but I just want to touch one more thing on Oklahoma City. I will say this. I think a ticket to OKC making the NBA finals is their ability to unlock Chet Holmgren, especially in a matchup that I do believe favors him over Rudy Gobert. I understand what Rudy Gobert can do from rim protecting. Chet's ability to space the floor could be a key here for OKC to unlocking that Minnesota defense, getting him out of that paint, drawing him out of there. Seamus, you mentioned it earlier. Maybe you don't go to Hartenstein. I don't think you do. I think if you're Oklahoma City, you have to rely a little bit more on your shooters and your spacing. I know against Denver, they went a little bit bigger against Jokic with Denver's inability to kind of have that second big man to throw out there next to him. You kind of got to play Chet at the 4 next to Hartenstein at the 5. I don't think you see that. I think Hartenstein is a guy that takes advantage of the non-Gobert minutes. And then I think when Gobert's on the floor, you got to use Chet to space them, draw them out, attack them that way. I do believe if OKC can do that, life could be easy for them. If they don't, I think that world that you talk about, Minnesota, here they come, Ant-Man in clutch time, I think that becomes a whole lot more likely. And I also want to say I am pretty excited. Celtics fan in me, it sucks to see how Boston season ended, and you don't even want to think about that. But this is also like first time we get to cover like we get to talk about this stuff, right? The conference finals and the NBA finals, and the Celtics aren't in it. So it's our first time here at Celtics Talk Weekly, even just doing coverage of this on Talking West, Talking East when the C's aren't there. So it's fun. And it's less stressful. I will say it's the stress factor's already gone and they ripped the Band-Aid. So I will say that. But again, OKC, you really got to unlock space out Minnesota. We saw Dallas do it last year against Minnesota. It's kind of remember that big shot against Gobert. Here comes Luka, left, right, zigzag, step back, pull up 3, game time. It's drawing Rudy out, make him a perimeter defender. If you can do that, you can beat this Timberwolves team.
And I'll add this too. The margins are so slim every single year. It's like no matter how much we talk about whoever has the advantages, the margins are so slim. I mean, look at the Celtics-Knicks series. If the Celtics pull out one of the first 2 games, right? But the first game's an overtime game, which means it was tied at the end of regulation. The second game was a 1-point game at the end of regulation. the Celtics pull out either one of those games, you might see the Celtics in this situation right now instead of the Knicks. Obviously, the margins went towards the Knicks, and we see that situation play out. Look at Minnesota last year. You're just talking about the first two games for Minnesota. Both of those games in the conference finals against the Mavericks last year, both of those games, Dallas won in crunch time in games 1 and 2 in Minnesota. Minnesota could have pulled out those games themselves and had a 2-0 series lead. So you just look at the margins. I think they're going to be extremely close in these two series, in the Pacers Knicks series, as well as the Thunder Wolves series. And I just don't see anybody, like, if there was any team to run away with anything here, it would obviously be the Thunder, just because of the season they've had and all the historical achievements. But in regard to everybody else, it's like I think the Pacers Knicks series is going to be fairly close, and I also think
Fun
the
watch.
Wolves.
Fun
I think the
watch.
Wolves are just playing easily their best basketball of the season, and I think this is a fitting conference finals. Like, even though, as tough as it is to look at the Celtics not in these conference finals, these are the teams who should be here right now, given the paths they've been
100%.
on this playoff run, but also just the trending of the trends of each team, right? We talk about all regular season long. Oh, you want to be playing your best come playoff time. You want to be playing your best come playoff time. Well, guess who's playing their best come playoff time right now? It's the Oklahoma City Thunder. It's the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's the Indiana Pacers. It's the New York Knicks. Those four teams in particular, you cannot look at another team who's already been eliminated and say, oh, yeah, they're playing their best basketball at this point. The Cavs certainly weren't. The Celtics certainly weren't. The Nuggets, maybe they were. Maybe they weren't. I would say they probably weren't. It was more of a miraculous type of thing what they were doing. It wasn't as if they were playing their. I would say their best basketball was probably in February.
Jokic exists.
And then the Warriors clearly not either, and just all the first round opponents as well, just not quite playing their best basketball of the season. Right now, you have four teams in the conference finals where I don't look at, like, conference finals of the past. We've always had that kind of ugly duckling, right? Like last year, you could say any of the teams outside of Boston were the ugly ducklings. Oh, Indiana's here. It's like, oh, Indiana's really here in the conference finals right now. Or on the other side, it's like, oh, Minnesota, they defeated Denver. Obviously, they were a top. I mean, you could say Minnesota or Dallas. That's what I'm saying. It's like Dallas is here. Dallas and Indiana, they're here right now. It's like every single year we kind of have an ugly duckling of. Now, I'll say this. Dallas was definitely playing their best basketball last year at this time of the year, for certain. Gotta give. Yep. And then it's like years past. I'm trying to think of like examples, like 2023. It's like the Lakers were there. Miami
was there, even though they made the finals, but they're still the ugly duckling.
But it's like you have these ugly ducklings every year that typically come about the conference finals. And yes, they might be playing well coming into the conference finals, but you're like, are they really playing their best basketball? Are they really that team? Like, have they taken more of an advantage of their path getting here than they actually did? Like, you're talking about the Knicks. Like, could they be that team this year?
Minnesota. I'm not going to lie. That might be Minnesota.
It could be Minnesota. It could also be the Knicks. Like, that's where I'm thinking. Everybody's like, oh, Minnesota and New York finals. Like, oh, they made the trade for Towns and Randall and DiVincenzo. I'm sitting there going, maybe those teams are the frauds. Like, those two teams, Minnesota, the Lakers, the Warriors, the first two rounds, the Knicks, the Pistons, the Celtics. Like, the Celtics, for as great as the Celtics, everybody perceived them to be, they were a broken down team at the end of the year, like straight up broken down team at the end of the year, unfortunately. And that's where I see it's like, Indiana and my so I gotta give him credit here. My friend Dylan, he gotta give him a shout out. He said, and maybe this was somewhere on the internet too, but I heard it from him. An Oklahoma City Thunder and Indiana Pacers NBA Finals series would be the first NBA Finals series telecasted on NBA TV ever. That's a joke, obviously, but seriously, that's like the NBA TV series. Straight up. That's the NBA TV. It's like Oklahoma City and Indiana. I mean, I'm in St. Louis. I'm right in the middle. Like, you have to go, if you're going through Indiana to Oklahoma, you have to come through St. Louis. Like, it's two Midwest markets. That's insane. But we do, of course, have the conference finals coming up here tonight as game one of the Western Conference Finals gets underway later this evening between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And then on the other side of the bracket tomorrow, the Pacers and the Knicks get underway for the 2025 Eastern Conference Finals. But that is going to do it here for us today on this conference finals preview special here on the Celtics Talk Weekly Network. And of course, we will have more specials coming to everybody for the rest of the offseason when they come about. I'm sure we'll have more content coming out when the finals come about. We'll be talking about these teams a little bit more come finals time. But as for right now, the conference finals are set. We don't know what the results are yet, but talked a lot about them here today. But that's going to be it for us on the Celtics Talk Weekly Network here. I am your host, Seamus Zarlingo, alongside of me, Rob Haytayan. As I always say, thank you all for watching. And do I say go Celtics? Do I say it's just I'm happy to be an NBA fan. I don't know. Go NBA, go Celtics.
There we go.